Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. Glad to be here with you again this week. And I thought I would record an episode just kind of about, in general, I want to talk about middle school because I have a lot of clients, for whatever reason, whose kids are starting middle school this year. And there is just a lot of angst around middle school, and for good reason. Middle school sucks ass, and there's no way around it. And the reason why middle school sucks so much is because it's full of middle schoolers. And middle schoolers, let's be honest, kind of suck. They're just like these messy blobs of half kid, half teenager, not even proto adults. They're like proto teenagers, which is like, why would you like teenagers aren't even that great? And a proto teenager, yuck. Middle school, it's a hot mess. And I have a couple friends who are middle school teachers and they totally love middle schoolers. And so do I. But when you are a middle schooler going to middle school, not the most fun. And my confession for you this week is a story about myself when I was in middle school. So I will tell you that in a second. Um, but what I want to talk about is kind of just like the angsty journey that all these parents of middle schoolers are going through right now that I'm seeing and what we can do about it. So when I was in middle school, I think I was in seventh grade. I really got my boobs. Like they came in full force pretty quick around the time when I was 13ish. And I was never super cool in school. I never was really popular. Boys never paid attention to me. I didn't have like a huge friend group or anything like that. I I sort of wavered between being totally invisible to total nerd alert, back and forth. That was the layer that I lived in the social stratigraphy pretty much until, well, let's be honest, maybe I'm still in that. That's maybe my still layer right now. But anyway, um, one day we were in an English class. I was sat towards the back of the room, just minding my own business, doing what I needed to do. And my strategy in middle school is pretty much like stay out of the spotlight, like stay out of the crosshairs. I felt like if you weren't being like teased or taunted, you were doing a good job, right? So that was what I was doing. And in one day in English class, the teacher got finished like maybe like 5 minutes early with the lesson and was just giving us time to like work on this essay that we were supposed to be writing. And out of nowhere, I'm just sitting at my desk, like doing my like 5 minutes of little extra time before the bell rang. Three of like the most popular kids in school, boys, came over to my desk and started asking me about how I was writing my essay and, what I was planning on writing about and if I could give them any suggestions on how to plan their essays and, all this stuff and something about the reading we were doing, whatever. They were asking me all these academic questions. And I was like so impressed. I was like, wow, everything they tell you about like just be a good girl and be smart and do well in school and everything will work out for you. I was like, oh, it's happening. It's happening. People are starting to notice that I'm just a smart person and interesting. And I love talking about schoolwork and I love talking about reading and writing. So this is great. And I misjudged these popular kids. Maybe they really do care about academics and stuff like that. And so I'm just going along with, the conversation. And then finally I realized they were all standing kind of like in a semicircle behind me and they were looking down my shirt. That's the reason why they came over to talk to me. is because I had gone from a zero nothing to a, C cup overnight. And I was wearing like a V-neck shirt or something like that. And it was really, and I'm glossing over. I know exactly what I was wearing because that's how impactful this moment was with me. I was wearing a blue t-shirt that was a scoop neck, and I never wore it again. Um, and it was mortifying. I felt so stupid for thinking that people might actually be interested in me. I felt so maybe like ashamed that I had like put my body on display. I felt like guilty, like it was my fault. Like if I hadn't dressed that way, people wouldn't have treated me like that. And it was just terrible. And so the reason why I share this story is it's a confession in the fact that it's like a true thing that happened to me. I don't obviously feel those ways about myself today when I think about that story. But the reason why I share that story is because that's a shitty thing that happened to me at school. And it's that kind of shitty thing. Shitty things are going to be happening to our kids in middle school because middle schoolers are shitheads. And since you're sending your kid to a school full of shitheads, shitty things are going to happen to them. And that's the truth. The reason why I share the story, the reason why I'm talking about middle school is because I have had countless conversations over the last couple of months with parents who have memories of how shitty middle school was. I'm sure we all have stories. Maybe it has nothing to do with like bodies or sexuality or anything like that, but we all have had experiences in middle school where people were jerks and assholes and crappy things happened to us. And because it was middle school and not elementary school, there was no trusted grown up like watching out for us at that same level of vigilance and care that you get when you're in elementary school. Kids are started to being left to their own devices a lot more in middle school, and unfortunately their own devices are very, leave a lot to be desired, let's just say that. And so these crappy situations are happening to kids in middle school without any grown up knowing it, monitoring it, doing anything about it, preventing it, fixing it, nothing. That is just how middle school works. And because we all had these crappy experiences in middle school, and because we now have kids who are in those situations, and we know that there's not going to be that level of oversight that would prevent our kids from being in those crappy situations or hurt by those crappy situations, we're scared. We don't want what happened. I don't want what happened to me to happen to my daughter. I don't want a bunch of boys looking down my daughter's shirt while she blissfully talks to them about, To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't want that for her because that was a really awful thing that happened to me. And I hated how it felt, and it impacted how I felt about myself and about the people around me and about school for years. I don't want that for my daughter. And I get it. If you have similar or worse stories and you are feeling the same way, it makes perfect sense that we all feel like that. Here's the shift that I hope we can all make so that we are not trying to like hovercraft and manage our kids' middle school experience. What would have made that situation better for me isn't my mom or some grown up making sure it never happened to me, partly because that's not possible, but also because life has shitty experiences in it. And it's actually kind of important that we start to experience some of those shitty things and figure out how to deal with them. So it actually wouldn't have made my life better for that to never have happened to me. I have realized that as an adult, and I firmly believe that. And I firmly believe that about the, grab bag of shitty stuff that happens to our kids in middle school. That's a big shift, right? What would have made my life better is not for that situation not to have ever happened to me at all. But if I had had a really healthy, grounded, trusting, open relationship with a parent where I could have come home from school and told them, this is what happened to me at school today, and not for them to fly into fix it mode and like call the principal or go talk to those kids' parents or any of that stuff. But if I could have talked about what had happened to me and had a really great conversation with somebody who helped me process my emotions about it, open my mind to different ways of looking at it, consider, the possibility that, all my shame and embarrassment, was optional and I didn't need to feel that way, and maybe try on some other ways of thinking about the situation. Like, if I had had somebody walk with me through that experience, that sort of would have made my life better. And that is what we can totally give our kids, no matter what shitty stuff is going to happen to them in middle school. We don't need to protect our kids from hard stuff. We just need to walk alongside them while they go through it. And in order for us to do that, we have to do so much of our own inner work, right? Like, in order for me to just, like, let's say my daughter comes home from school and says, like, the exact same thing happened to her that had happened to me. In order for me to show up, just saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Thank you so much for telling me that. That's a big deal that you came home and told me. I feel really honored. And, how was that for you? Like, how did it feel when you realized what was going on? And it makes perfect sense that you felt that way. And I totally get it. And you have every right to feel the way that you feel. And what do you want to do about it? How can I support you? How do you want to take care of yourself around this thing that happened to you? What do you want to do next time? And even if my kid says, well, I'm just never going to wear an attractive shirt again for the rest of my life, being able to say, I can understand why you might make that conclusion. Like, how would you feel if you chose to dress differently going forward? What if you missed out on wearing the clothes that you like? How would that feel to you? And being okay with her making a decision that every part of me is saying, no, don't dress for other people. It's their problem, not your, all of those things. Like, being able to show up in that conversation in that way is only possible for me if I have done my own work, so that when my kid comes home from school, I'm not thinking, oh my God, they're traumatized. I have to stop this. I need to call the principal. This is absolutely unacceptable. These things shouldn't be happening, blah, 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 blah. The fear factor that we have around middle school is the thing that we as parents need to work on, so that we're not afraid for our children. We're instead trusting in both them, in ourselves, and in our relationship with them, that the three of us, me, my kid, and our relationship, that we have what it takes to go through a hard thing. And so now I don't have to make sure that hard things don't happen, because we have what it takes to do hard things and go through hard things. And my kid's not alone, and my kid has all of the ingredients inside of them to go through this hard thing. And that doesn't mean it's going to be fun for them, or that it's not going to hurt them, or that it's going to, not impact them. None of that. That all of those things are still true. It's just that that's okay, not because it's right what's going on at school, but because we can handle it and we can work with it. So shifting from protect my kid from hard things to walk alongside my kid while they go through hard things is a really big shift. And I really think that in order for us to make that shift, we have to do our own work. I need to process what happened to me when I was in middle school. And this is something that I've talked to so many parents about over the last couple of months. Is it sounds like you had a really hard time in middle school. It makes perfect sense that you don't want your kid to go through what you went through. Let's talk about what happened to you in middle school. And, not brush it under the rug, not say, oh, well, kids, that's just how kids are. Yeah, it is how kids are. And it really fucked me up. So can I talk about that right now? Like, that's a big deal. being in a conversation with somebody and like, frankly, having the conversation that it would have been great for you to have had back then. And for whatever reason, you didn't. Maybe you couldn't. Maybe you didn't have a person you could do it with. Maybe you just weren't like emotionally mature enough to have that conversation yet, whatever. But that conversation still needs to happen. There's a part of you that still needs to hear it's not okay what those boys did. And you have every right to not have liked that. And it makes perfect sense that you feel embarrassed and ashamed. And there's some other things that you might want to take into consideration here. And I'm here for you. And, you know, that sucks. I'm really sorry that that happened to you. That conversation should have happened back then, and maybe it didn't. And now it can happen. And when you have that conversation and obviously feel the feelings and cry and whatever it is, you can get much more easily to a place where, yeah, middle school happens. Middle school happens to good people. and and we can navigate those things, and we don't have to prevent them or overreact to them when they happen to our kids. We can just be there with them while they go through it and decide what they want to do and decide who they want to be. And that is actually the beautiful, magical thing that comes out of middle school. And that's what all my friends who are teachers in middle school and love middle schoolers will tell you is you get to watch these kids who come in as like just complete hot messes walk out knowing a little bit more about who they are and how they want to be in the world and how to take care of themselves and how to be a little bit more grown up and managing themselves and managing their time and all these beautiful things they get to happen in middle school so that kids go off to high school just being a little bit more equipped to be closer and closer and closer to grown-ups. They get to be proto adults by the time they're in high school, and they start out middle school as proto teenagers. um and so being with our kids and walking alongside them while they go through all of that stuff is how they get to equip themselves and discover this stuff about themselves and feel a little bit more grounded in themselves and a little bit more confident in themselves. And I would say usually by the end of freshman year of high school, things just really start to congeal, and kids definitely seem like they just got their feet more firmly planted on the ground. Not true for every single kid, but just that's the general arc that I have observed. So think about what you need to be able to step out of that, like maybe panic, anxiety mode around whatever chapter your kid is in. Because let's be honest, this doesn't just have to be about middle school. Um, and ask yourself, not just what do I need, but am I giving it to myself? Like, do I actually have a possible way to get what I need? Am I having those conversations? Do I have someone I can have those conversations with? Am I giving myself the time and the space to feel the feels and process the emotions? And do I feel ready now to be more of a companion along this journey than a fixer? And if the answer to that question is no, any of those questions is no, you might consider working with someone like me. It's my job not to just teach you, oh, here's what you do when your kid doesn't want to do schoolwork or comes home because somebody, was mean to them in school, but like, here's how you get to the place where you can do that. Here's where you get to the place where your kid can be in middle school and you're not like doom scrolling every night before you go to bed or, you know, staying up all night Googling things on the internet about bullies and consent and all of the scary things that come up for us when we think about kids in middle school. There are ways to have a middle schooler kid that look peaceful and harmonious and not stressful and not anxiety provoking. And that's my job, is to help you figure that part out too. Not just the do this, don't do that. But let's see what's going on for you so that you actually enjoy having a middle schooler. Middle school doesn't have to be like a rehashing. When your kid goes through middle school, it doesn't mean you're re-going through middle school. So I hope that's helpful for you all today, and that you are navigating this first beginning chapter of the school year well and happily. And I also hope that I'll see you soon. If you feel like it's time for us to talk, take advantage of that free discovery call you hear me talk about every week. Set it up. Give yourself that time to share what's on your mind and unburden yourself to me, and get my honest and loving feedback in return. I can't wait to talk to you again, and you'll hear from me again next week. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.